Hi, Camille here. I'm an animal communicator, a channel, a healer, and a storyteller. And today's story is about a parrot called Elmo. But before I get into the story, did you know that sometimes when animals' lives terminate prematurely, that they can actually return to their beloved human? Well, today's story is about one of those instances. So Elmo was a little gold and green parrot and lived outside of the city that I live in on a farm. And her human Jocelyn called me one day to say that she had some concerns about Elmo because the parrot kept biting her husband. Jocelyn had tried all kinds of different remedies to stop the parrot from biting her husband, but the parrot would not. Elmo would not stop biting him. And she wanted me to talk to Elmo to find out what was going on and to see if there was anything that I could do to help the situation. I agreed to talk to Elmo, and I meditated with the parrot before I went out to see Jocelyn, and then arrived out at the farm to see Elmo sitting on a walkway in the kitchen surrounded by a swarm of cats. A little bit alarming, birds, prey, cats, that sort of thing, but it was lovely to see what was actually going on when I stopped to look, because the cats were all looking very lovingly at Elmo, not like they wanted to eat Elmo, but that they were just fascinated by everything that Elmo was doing. And Elmo was definitely not threatened by the cats. As soon as I sat down, Elmo scooted over onto my hand, walked up my arm, sat on my shoulder, and started to nuzzle my ear. It was clear that Elmo was a charmer. In the conversation with Jocelyn and her husband, she said that Elmo bit him all the time. In fact, Elmo went out of his way to bite Dave, and actually attacked at times, yet didn't bite anyone else. Didn't bite animals, didn't bite anyone else, was really loving, got along really well with everyone, but continued to bite Dave. So in a conversation with Elmo, I asked what was going on, why? And in that conversation, I discovered very quickly that Elmo was not a boy, but Elmo was a female parrot. And although she said she didn't mind being referred to as Elmo, she would prefer that they talked about her as a female. That was agreed. The humans agreed to that, no problem. They were going to refer to her as she from then on. That was great. However, we still had the issue of Elmo biting Jocelyn's husband. I knew from other experiences with animals that sometimes when an animal is reluctant to make a change, if you can find a specific issue or topic that makes sense to them and bargain with them, you can often get them to change their mind. So I started to look for what that might be in this situation. First of all, I wanted to know why Elmo kept biting him. And when I asked her, she said she didn't like him. I asked then, is there anything that he can do that would help her not bite him? And her immediate firm response was, he can leave. I said that wasn't going to happen and that they needed to find a way to live together. And so again, we went back to the bargaining. And eventually it became clear that one of Elmo's absolute favorite treats was cheese. So at that point, her caregivers agreed to give her no cheese at all, except in the evening, and Jocelyn's husband would give her a piece of cheese every night if he wasn't bitten during the day. Elmo agreed that as long as she was given a piece of cheese, the next day she would not bite him. And that was the end of the visit. The issue was solved. Elmo got her cheese every night, and she stopped biting Dave. That was fine for a few years, and then all of a sudden I got a call from Jocelyn again. And she told me that Elmo had just died. She had gone to open the cage to let Elmo out, and what happened was Elmo was dead on the floor of the cage. She said that Elmo left her a message, and that message was a little drop of blood in the shape of a heart, which was typical of Elmo's loving energy. There was no reason no medical reason. Elmo hadn't been sick or anything. She just died. About a year later, I got a call from Jocelyn again. And she asked this time if I would look at a small kitten that she had in the house at that point because she thought the kitten was going to die. What had happened was a barn cat had kittens, and one in particular was doing very poorly. So Jocelyn had taken that little kitten into her house, hoping that she could give her some kind of care that would help her so that she didn't die. And I had a look at this little kitten, and I envisioned her sitting in meditation, sitting in the cup of my hand. She was so small, but she had a huge personality, and informed me in my conversation after I'd given her energy that her name was Sally, that she had no intention whatsoever of ever going back to the barn, that she was going to stay with Jocelyn the rest of her life, and that she only was going to eat wet food, and chicken was her preference. I laughed when she finished giving me her message and said I'd relay it on to Jocelyn. And a little later that day, I talked to Jocelyn and gave her the message from the little cat who had told me her name was Sally. As I was talking to Jocelyn, I realized that Sally's energy was in fact the same energy that Elmo had. And when I was talking to Jocelyn, she said, well, Sally was in the house and was actually eating wet cat food that was chicken, as well as some cooked chicken pieces, and was doing better since I had given her the energy work. Jocelyn also said that Sally was behind her neck, sitting behind her neck, ensconced under her hair, which had been a favorite place of Elmo. Elmo spent a lot of time riding on Jocelyn's neck and shoulders under her hair, and then peeking out from the hair and laughing and talking to people. Jocelyn also said that Sally seemed to have caused all the cats that were in the house to be very curious and very interested in whatever she was doing, much like they were with Elmo. So it was clear that some of Elmo's personality, some of Elmo's energy had returned via Sally. And Sally stayed with Jocelyn for many, many years, happily riding across her shoulders on the back of her neck and purring and loving her. And that's the story about Elmo, who returned in the form of a cat. Now, what happens often when an animal dies prematurely, there is an opportunity for that animal to come back if the contract between the human and the animal has not been finished. Of course, as a human, we all want our animals to return to us, but that's not how it works. Animals make the decision whether or not they're going to return. This was one story about an animal, but I do have other stories about animals returning and some of the synchronicities related to their return, and I'll share them with you at another time. Meanwhile, until we speak again, remember to listen carefully to your animals because they're always talking to you.